This is Market Day Report. All right, I've got a number here for you, $145,235. $145,235. Okay, you probably know what you could do with that, but how would you get it? I'll tell you coming up. Right now, I want to tell you about the corn market, and we're now up 2 pennies. We've expanded our range up to nearly $4.92. We trade at $4.91.5, and that's 2 pennies higher here on the session. Now, soybeans are getting a little more kick, up 12.5. $11.86 a bushel on the new crop November beans. Here's soy meal contracts were higher across the board, second straight day, and bean oil has now turned higher as well. How about the wheat market? July, soft red, 615.5. It's up 3 1/4. We're watching hard red move up 4 3/4, 672. Somebody woke up here and the markets are moving again. And how about the cotton market? Up 108 points. We're off the highs of the session at 84.77. Joe Lardy is with CHS Market Advisors. Joe, it was so quiet, and it's not like, we've got fireworks going off, but at least we're moving the markets around. What's happening?
Well, I think this is, when you said the word calm, this feels like it's a little bit of the calm before the storm, because next week we are going to get bombarded with all kinds of very important fundamental information. We've got the WASDE report next week. We've got the Kansas wheat tour next week. And then we've got the meeting between President Trump and Xi in China next week. So the direction of commodities, I mean, it's nice that we're up today, but I think absolutely anything can happen next week with those 3 major events happening. So all commodities are in play, and it's going to be an interesting week.
Okay, so when we step back, let's take one of them here, just
Okay.
the WASDE report.
Yep.
Any expectations there?
Well, that's going to be the interesting part, is that, we did get the prospective plannings report, right? But people, I think, are pretty skeptical because all those surveys happened right on the cusp of the war. So is that truly what people intended to plan, or did the war change their opinion? Is the government going to give us a trendline yield, or are they going to haircut that, or, maybe bump it up a little bit because we are planting so fast? I think the variability going into this report is outsized. It's bigger than normal, right? Because of the war situation, because of the uncertainty around prospective plannings. I think that's going to make this report bigger than we normally see. And I think people need to be prepared for some big time volatility next week.
Okay, I wrote down on Monday a quote from Warren Buffett. He was being interviewed, and his quote was, "It's what you don't think of that does all the damage." Mm-hmm. There's no way to go into next week having any idea what we don't know, right? So how do we prepare and try to cover all the bases?
Well, that's where, trying to gather as much information as possible, because I think what happens sometimes in these situations is we get blinders on and we project what we think is going to happen, and we kind of stick with that narrative, not realizing that, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that X, Y, and Z could have happened. And that's where I really try to approach this market from, I want to cover all my bases, and then I'm going to assign a probability to what I think is probably the most likely thing to happen. But again, a lot of volatility. And when we look at the range of estimates going into the WASDE report, the boats aren't all lined up in one direction. There's a pretty big variety between all the analysts. And, we could cut the corn carryout down by a couple million bushels, and we could balloon it by several hundred million bushels. That's going to have a huge impact on price.
And not to mention, we're also watching what's happening south of the border, not just south of the border. Southern hemisphere is still in play as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the big things I think people are going to miss in this report is the big gap that between the USDA and what we're seeing reported out of some of the South American countries, specifically Argentina. We could see a massive revision there that could really, completely change global balance sheets there.
Well, always plenty to think about. I guess that means one thing. Go enjoy the weekend. We'll see you on Monday. And
it's going to be exciting.
We'll get our seatbelts on. Joe Lardy is with CHS Market Advisors. All right, $145,235. Think about that. I'll tell you what it's all about coming up on Market Day Report.